Welcome. Welcome from the Corporate Women's Ministry Department of the Church of God of Prophecy, UK. We particularly wish to welcome you all to our March Connect Live series. The edition is around bereavement, loss, and grief. Thank you all for joining us. Those within the UK, from the different regions, and from those who are tuning in from abroad. Thank you for joining us. Tonight we're discussing a topic, as I said, of bereavement, grief, and loss. Many of us have lost loved ones. We know families and friends, perhaps brethren, colleagues, employees who lost loved ones as well. Some of us have not been able to mourn the loss of loved ones or pay the usual cultural respects that we would normally do due to the restrictions of the pandemic, such as home visits, nights, pouring out our love, even across our close family. We prohibited from doing that. So although this is a very sensitive topic, we felt that we had to mark the anniversary of the pandemic and the anniversary of some of our loved ones, and that it's pertinent that we open this topic up for discussion. So as we discuss this area of bereavement and loss, it might be close to many of your hearts. And excuse us if we might shed a tear, or you might shed a tear tonight. But we must remember, we must have this discussion. So thank you for joining us. And if you know anyone that could benefit from watching this program tonight, please share with them, let them know, because we will be discussing areas of support for anyone that might be going through bereavement personally, but also if we're supporting others who are going through bereavement, we will hear aspects that will support us in how we support others on that journey. So again, thank you for joining us. We look forward to so many different speakers, and we've got exciting lineup of panelists for you tonight. But before I go any further, I am going to introduce you to my co-host for tonight, Powell. She wasn't with us last month, but we're so pleased to have her back. Over to Alni.
Thank you, Joyce, and it's very nice to be back. Good evening to all our viewers, and thank you once again for joining with us this evening on our live series on bereavement, grief, and loss. I am very passionate about this subject because I have worked as a volunteer bereavement counselor for Cruise Bereavement Care for over 10 years. It's a very long time, offering specific and practical help. There are some things I do as a counselor, for example, to create an environment in which the bereaved person can be themselves and show their feelings rather than having to put up a front. Also, to accept that everyone grieves in their own way. Losing someone important to us can be, as Joyce said, emotionally devastating, whether that be a partner, family member, friend, or even a pet. It is natural to go through a range of physical and emotional processes as we gradually come to terms with the loss. I lost my dad in 2009 and my mom in 2011, 2 years apart. And my experience and your experiences, I know, are different. Bereavement affects everyone in different ways. And it's possible to experience any range of emotions. There is no right or wrong way to feel. Feelings of grief can also happen because of other types of loss or changes in circumstances. As Joyce said, I know that this is an extremely sensitive subject to many, but I hope what will be discussed this evening you will find helpful in coping with your loss. Thank you. At this time, I'm going to introduce our first panelist, and her name is Shay Odijiji.
Hello, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm going to be sharing my story from my book tonight, and I'm sure you'll be blessed by my story. Thank you all.
I'll just share a little bit actually about Shay. She's a transformational coach, certified advanced grief recovery specialist, author, trainer and coach, mentor, a project consultant, and the CEO of From All Wedding and Events. Shay is passionate about helping widows, widowers, and single parents. And single parents find purpose from their pain so they can be transformational leaders and leave a lasting legacy and an advocate of helping children with loss. She founded the bi-weekly live show on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube called Finding Purpose in Pain. Wow. Where she interviews different people that have gone through any kind of pain and loss and have turned it around and found a purpose. You will be hearing more about Shay's story later on. Our second panelist is Sandra Bowden. Sandra has over 25 years experience as a counselor, psychotherapist, supervisor, and trainer. She's also a Relate trained couple counselor. Sandra has worked as a lecturer and in both higher and further education. She has also developed and delivered bespoke training courses for the NHS and various counseling organizations. In 2002, Sandra was instrumental in setting up a counseling service in her local church that is so needed in our churches today. In addition to her continuing involvement with this, she has a small private practice working with individuals, couples, and groups. She also provides supervision to other counselors and therapists, school, pastoral staff, and staff from a cancer charity. You will be hearing much more from Sandra later on. I now hand over to Joyce.
Thank you. Thank you, Alni, for those introductions. Wow, we're really looking forward to hearing from Shay and Sandra. Without any further ado, I'm going to introduce the next two guests. Our next guest is Anne Scott, and we're really looking forward to Anne sharing with us. And I'll just read a little bit of your biography, Anne. Hi, lovely to see you. Anne is from the West Midlands regional manager for a leading educational charity where she spent the last 10 years supporting senior leaders to build a fairer education for all. I love that. With over 20 years experience in education and training, Anne has successfully fulfilled a number of roles from class teacher, lecturer, trainer, and consultant, as well as leading a number of high-profile national government initiatives. You'll have to tell us a bit more about that later on. And he's also co-creator of the Bereavement Network, a community initiative set up to provide a safe space to discuss related issues. She's married. She's got 2 grown-up children and loves traveling. Anne, please say hi to everyone out there.
Hello, everyone. It is absolutely a pleasure to be here. It's clearly a sensitive topic, but I think we can find ways to breathe in a good way. So I'll be sharing more about the bereavement network that, as you've heard, I have co-founded, and sharing a little bit about my story as to why I'm talking about bereavement today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne. That's so nice to hear from Anne. Next, we're going to go over to our fourth guest that will be joining us, none other than our own Angela Mason. Hi, Angela. So, Angela, great to have you. For those that don't know, Angela is our national corporate PA, personal assistant to our national presiding bishop, and basically is the one that keeps the show on the road. Wow, wow, wow. Angela has a son, a grown up, well, is he a teenage son, Angela? Is he a
Well,
teenager?
he's 22, so yeah,
Oh
he's a
gosh,
big
well,
man.
he's a big man. He's a big man now. He's a big man. Um, and Angela, you know, when I read your profile and you know, you've got nieces and nephews and wow, you seem your hands are full all the time.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah,
Yes, with work
and
as well.
wow. And how long? Tell us how long you've been in this role, Angela.
Okay, so I've been in the role since the 15th of June 2020. However, I volunteered for 13 years alongside my beloved friend, Sister Colleen. Yeah.
Yes, and as you mentioned, Sister Colleen, it was first year anniversary since the passing of Sister Colleen this week, and wow, I think it really shocked the whole, not just in the UK, but she was known internationally, and she was known by so many, not just her family, but her friends. And as you said, you volunteered and worked with her for 13 years, and I can see you've got her picture in the background. And you know, just stay with me because shortly, Angela is going to be leading us into a time of reflection because, as you all know, nationally, this week marked the first anniversary of the international pandemic, and certainly the start of the pandemic within the UK and the National Day of Reflection. And we felt it was poignant that we took some time out tonight to reflect and to just remember all those that have passed away over this last year, and not just those lost to COVID, but those who have passed away. We've all been affected. Would you say that, Angela?
Absolutely. And you know, this reflection is not only for those that we lost, you know, in 2020 and in 2021, but for all those that we've lost over the years.
Yeah. Yes. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Angela, who's going to lead this reflection. Thank you.
The 23rd of March 2021 will be remembered as a national day of reflection for all those who lost their lives to COVID-19, the invisible disease. On this day, citizens within the United Kingdom paused to observe 60 minutes of silence at 12 midday to also mark the anniversary of the first coronavirus lockdown. The message was framed as reflect, support, and hope. In March 2020, when the lockdown began, 335 people had already died. The National Day of Reflection gave the nation a chance to contemplate our collective loss while supporting those close to us who are still dealing with isolation and bereavement. We remember those of you who have lost multiple members of your family, our very own COGOT friends, family, and especially our giants, pioneers, and waymakers. Some of us, including me, are standing on those shoulders, a long-lasting legacy of faithfulness and good works. As we reflect on our collective loss, we also spare a thought for the millions who have been left behind to grieve and carry on without their loved ones. For many of us, 2020, and even now, saw our liberties stolen away, our mental health suffered, and life as we knew it changed forever. Many are still heartbroken as lives have been turned upside down, hopes and dreams have been shattered. Many are still living in trauma and despair. COVID-19 robbed millions of us who have not been able to say a proper goodbye or even pay tribute and honour in the way that we're accustomed to or would have even wanted to. Unable to gather to celebrate the life of our loved ones, unable to attend the cemetery and lay our wreaths. The anguish we faced of not being able to comfort our family, our friends and colleagues in their time of grief and mourning will live with us forever. On the 26th of January 2021, we were informed of the milestone of over 100,000 lives lost to COVID-19. Since then, this number has continued to climb, with all hopes pinned on the vaccines to slow down and diminish this invisible deadly disease. Today, I spare a thought for anyone who has suffered a significant loss for whatever reason, whether it was in 2020 or years gone by. We never get over the death of a loved one, regardless of whether we are prepared for it or if it happens suddenly. The vacuum, the pain in our hearts, the hopelessness we feel at the time is unbearable. We oftentimes find comfort in the sea of memories, the laughter, the conversations, a feeling, a smell, or even a sound or a particular music, all of which can trigger thoughts about someone we've lost. Somehow, from moment to moment, day by day, year by year, we slowly learn to live with the loss. Revelations 21 verse 4. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Death will no more. There will be no mourning, crying, or pain anymore, for the former things have passed away. 1 Peter 5 verse 10. After you have suffered for a little while, the God of all grace, the one who called you into his eternal glory in Christ Jesus, will himself restore, empower, strengthen, and establish you. Romans 15 verse 13. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in faith, so that you overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. And now we will observe 1 minute silence to remember all those loved ones we have lost over the years, not just to COVID-19 in 2020, but again I say, over the years. Dear God, we thank you for who you are and for being with us today. Walk with us all who are on the bereavement journey, no matter what stage we are at. May your peace flood every mind, soothe every hurting heart, provide comfort to those in despair, and peace to those who are suffering from trauma. Flood our thoughts with messages of hope and bring joy to us in unexpected ways. May we exercise steadfast faith in you, God, and remain confident that you will never leave us comfortless in our time of need. Let there be light in our darkest moments of anger, anxiety, depression, and fear. Illuminate our hearts and cause us to smile again, and not just to exist, but to live through this season. Overshadow us with your limitless love and cover us under your divine feathers. Keep us in perfect peace as our minds are stayed focused on you, because we trust in you. Amen. I will now hand back to our host, Minister Joyce.
Thank you. That was so heartwarming. Thank you for leading us into this time of reflection. And I hope everyone's received that and able to participate and partake in that. Okay, without any further ado, we are going now to our time of worship, and Alni will introduce our worship psalmists for tonight.
Thank you, Joyce. Just before I do that, actually, I've forgotten to do something. I introduced Sandra, but she did not get the chance to say hi. So can we have Sandra to say hi? Is that possible?
Good evening. Yeah. Good evening, everyone. I shall be talking later about the process of grief. It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And what I would like to say to everyone who's listening, just to be aware that this may touch some deep pain. So look after yourselves. And I look forward to sharing something with you later. Okay. And over back to Alni.
Thank you, Sandra, and I do apologise for missing, for not allowing you to greet. Okay, then we're going to move on to worship, and we're going to have a group of young people singing to us, and they're called Arise. Arise was written in a time of global unrest, of COVID-19 and racial divides. They quote, "They came together across the UK and Europe to write and release a song of encouragement, faith, and hope." I want you to sit back and enjoy Arise.
There is a cry rising from the land.
powerful song. What do you think, Joyce? Arise. Isn't it amazing that they were able to write the song during COVID-19, and it's so good that they were able to incorporate people from Europe, from Poland. It's such a wonderful thing to see.
It's absolutely amazing. And,
Yeah.
in the song, Arise, it's uplifting.
Mm.
And, even as we think about the topic for tonight, they talk about standing side by side together. And, when you're
Yes.
going through a journey, it makes a difference if you can have someone walk through that journey with you. It
Yes.
makes such a difference, hand in hand. So, yeah, thanks, Sister Maureen, and the rest of the crew who pulled this together. Absolutely amazing. God bless them for this work, and may they continue to do many, many more. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move now into the plenary session. And our first panelist is Shay. Shay will be speaking to us about her journey set out in her book, Unashamed, A Young Widow's Journey from Loss to Triumph, and how she finds her purpose through pain. Over to you, Shay.
Thank you, Annie. It's like I said, it's such a privilege to be here. And it's also a privilege to actually share my story every time the Lord allows me. So tonight, for everyone joining us, my name is Shay, and I'm going to be telling you about my journey that the Lord has helped me. But I'm starting with this question for anyone watching us. How can you grieve and still have hope? Is there such a thing like rejoicing when you go through diverse situations that has no explanation for? Is there actually light at the end of the tunnel? Those were my questions with my journey. I was a young girl, that finished university. And as we normally do back then, I'm from Nigeria, you serve the country for a year. And I was posted to serve in this part of the country in national service. But I met someone, I met the love of my life. I met a young man then. And as you expect, one thing led to another. It wasn't the person I wanted to marry. I didn't have the plan to marry. The plan was I was just going to go there for 4 weeks and come back, for 3 weeks and come back and go and study abroad. But 4 weeks led to marriage because I came back telling my parents that I found somebody that I would marry. And I remember when I got home and I told my dad and I said, I've seen someone I'm going to marry. He said, that is not the plan. You were only supposed to go there for 3 weeks and come back and go abroad to study your clinical psychology. And I said, I think something has changed. I've met somebody. I was excited. I think that can wait. I will go on with this. And I got back. I told him, I said, I think this is the person, that I'm supposed to marry. And he said, okay, let's meet this person. And I remember before I took this gentleman back home to my parents, I told him, I said, you will only pass this test if my dad agrees that I'm going to marry you. But I got home, I took him home, and for one reason, he had like a similar resemblance of my dad. They even shared the same month of their birthdays. So everything just fell into place, and I knew at that point he was the guy for me. He adores me. He takes care of me. It was everything a young little girl would ever dreamt of. And we did get married. A beautiful marriage, excited, believing to start a very productive and fruitful life ahead of me. But my world came crashing down just after 1 year into marriage. Just 1 year. And for me, I was wondering, did I wait all this period? Because I did marry at 27. Did I wait all this while, young Christian girl, just only to be married and this taken from me. I remember this fateful day. He said he was going for an interview, and I said, I don't think you should go for an interview because we're preparing for my birthday, which was a Saturday, and we bought everything. Everything was ready, and he wanted to go for the interview. And I said, please don't go. But you know, man, he said, I'll just go and you won't feel it. I'll be back. And this particular day, he came to the office as usual just to say, oh, I'm ready to go, and said all his goodbyes. Little did I know that that was the last time I was going to see him. When he finished the interview, I called him just to check how was the interview, and he said it went well. The next call I got was, can I speak to Mrs. This? That call that nobody wants to hear. And I remember asking, yes, I am. And they said, oh, sorry, there's been an accident. And I remember the first thing that I said was, can I speak to him? And he's been his usual caring person. He said, I'm fine. It's just a little accident. And I told him, I said, with the way you're sounding, I don't think it's little. I'm traveling down now. And that was what I did. I remember taking the first flight back to where it was. But on getting home, because if you're familiar with Nigeria, sometimes it's late, to get to some places. So I arrived Lagos really late. And my dad told me, we will go ahead of you just to check how things were. So once you get down, just wait for us and let us tell you and give you the feedback of what has happened. So when I got to Lagos, I had to wait for them to come. But when they came, they told me the situation of things, that it was really bad. And all through that night, I remember praying all night, believing that God, please answer. I don't want anything, to happen to this lovely, lovely man that I've married. And I remember all night, praying all night with my mom and my dad and everyone. I remember speaking to him on the phone that night. And he said, Shay, where are you? And I was explaining to him that it's not safe to travel this late. I will see you first thing tomorrow morning. Little did I know. We woke up very early in the morning. We didn't even sleep anyway. We woke up around 4 a.m. All set. Everything was set, ready to set out. Was already in the car and the call came. My dad picked up the call and I noticed he was acting really strange and he was asking some questions that I didn't know why he was asking. Eventually, he couldn't take it anymore. He broke down on the floor crying and he said, oh, we lost him. He's gone. And I couldn't believe it at that point that this person that I called my husband was gone. I was just 28. I was young. I was naive. It was just 1 year into the marriage. I had no clue what was going on. I remember a lot of people came in because that's the normal, usual thing. They come, when things has happened like that. I was took into the living room. And I remember one scripture came to me then on that day. It was the story of Daniel, when Daniel lost his son with Bathsheba. When he said, I've prayed. If God were to save my son, he would save my son. But now I know he's gone. And David went to take his bath and put oil. And a lot of people were confused. Why would he do that? That was exactly my story. Because when they told me, I knew we prayed all night. I knew that God was good. What happened? And the first thing I asked, can you just give me something to eat? And everybody thought I was in shock. I didn't believe what was going on. They didn't understand. But I wasn't in shock. But that scripture came alive to me. That scripture was my reality that is gone. My beloved husband was gone. And it was at that stage I knew that my life has changed. Something has changed in my life. And the journey began because then I had to move to get my things back. We had to start planning the burial. And according to our tradition, as if you get familiar with it, as a young widow, you're not allowed to see your dead husband. It's not allowed. You're not allowed to, to say your final goodbye. Don't remember I said I never saw him. The last I saw of him was when he told me goodbye in the morning. I wasn't allowed to see him. There was so much of cultural thing. I have to wear a particular cloth, just to make sure that that's what was being done. But eventually, during the burial, I actually had a tantrum, and I insisted. I want to have a closure to this. I want to see him. I want to see what it looks like in the coffin, even though it was strange. But after a lot of force, they allowed me. They put it aside and said, okay, just come and have a look. And I saw him there lying down lifeless. And the reality for me came that yes, he's actually gone, because I was seeing a dead person, in the coffin. And I knew that was it. It's gone. And at that point, I decided that now this is real. You need to pick yourself up and move on in life. But little did I know that in that journey of moving ahead in life, a lot of things have changed. I've become a different person. I was no longer that young little girl. I was no longer a married person. I was no longer a single person. I was no longer, I was a widow at 28. And everything changed. So I had to start picking myself up. But on my journey, I got a lot of people that helped me along my journey. And one of the journey that I had was a friend of mine that said, I think you've gone through a lot at the moment. I think we need to take a break. I just need to take you on together and let's go on a mini vacation, just for you to calm down and just, reflect on everything that's happened to you. On this trip, I met a lot of people, but one of the person that I met on that trip was a gentleman he was the owner of a bank. He was the MD of the bank. And I remember my friend going to him and said, sir, my friend has just lost her husband. She needs a job. She needs to move back to Lagos. And he gave me his card. When I got back to Lagos, I decided to go for this interview. And that was around about almost 4 months after the incident, when I was about thinking that, okay, I can move on with my life. Nobody needs to know that I've ever gotten married. Nobody needs to know my story. I had to move back to my parents' house, which wasn't pleasant. So I thought at that point I could move on. So now with a new job, if I get this new job, I will have a new life. I will have a new beginning. But little did I know again that the shock was there. I got to the interview, and at the final stage, the lady looked at me. She said, you've gotten the job, but there's something I need to tell you. And I said, what? She said, I think you're pregnant. I think you're pregnant. And I was really angry. I was like, why would you say I'm pregnant? You don't want to give me the job? Because I didn't want to relay my story all over again. That I'm a widow, I don't have a husband, you can't say I'm pregnant. And it was almost 4 months. I didn't know whether I was pregnant. And she said something to me. She said, do me a favor. Can you just go and just have a test for yourself? Those days, we didn't have the strips that we just do this test and you just do you just get your result. So you actually have to do your blood test to actually find out whether you're pregnant. And I remember walking up to 4 clinics to actually do my test, to be able to tell, to convince myself that I was pregnant. I walked up to the first one and they said it's positive. I walked up to the second, to the third, to the fourth. And I remember getting back home angry and I was like, God, why? And I told my parents, I said, I know you're a priest, but I don't care. I don't want anybody to know I've ever been married. Now I'm pregnant. I'm going to take this baby off. And I called the doctor, everything was ready. And I remember getting a call from my sister. And she said, don't do it. Do you know the purpose of this child? Will his father be happy that you are going to take this child up? Or if this is going to be your only child, why would you do this? And I remember walking off from that clinic crying, not knowing what step I would take next. I was angry. I was happy. I had mixed feelings. And one of the things I tell people is my pillow was a good testament to how much I cried, because I didn't have an expression, to cry and express exactly how I felt, because I had to move back home. And when I moved back home, I couldn't cry in front of my parents because they always want me to be strong. I had to go to work. I couldn't cry at work. So I had to move on with my life. And remember, in this time, I didn't fit in anymore. I didn't have any friends that was a widow at that point, because every widow I've ever knew were from 60 and above. I've never met any single mother at that point. It was some years back. There was nobody in my family all around that I could actually relate to, that, oh, this is a single parent. How will I go through this journey? But I decided I was going to walk the journey. I decided that this is the journey. This is my story, and I have to walk this journey. And I decided that I was going to keep my child. And I was coping with my life until 3 years after that. 3 years after the incident, I lost my dad. And when I lost my dad, it was like a roller coaster of everything coming together. I lost it all. I couldn't stop crying. I was angry. I couldn't understand what was going on. And that went on until a point that I decided, Sheyi, this is not your life. You have always been that girl that's bubbling, that had so much in front of her. Would you break at this incident, this trauma that's happened to you? So I decided to pick myself up. I decided that the responsibility was only mine to do. I decided that I needed to take my story, to take myself, and be the better version of me. Then I started on my journey of transformation, on my journey of self-help, of my journey of asking for help, of my journey of rediscovering myself, of my journey of accepting this incident that has happened to me. Though I was ashamed that I had to, I had a baby. People always ask you questions. Oh, you're not married? Oh, okay. How come you have a child? And all those funny questions. The look, the rejection, so many. I went through a lot of things, rejection and all that. But in it all, God was faithful. I decided to relocate. And my life began, because I took ownership of my story. Because I was ready to ask for God to help me. I remember sometimes I couldn't even pray. All I could say was, oh God, help me. All I could say is, I don't understand this journey. I can't see. I don't know what's going to happen next. But I know you can help me. I know you are a good father. I know you will just not leave me alone going through all this by myself. And that's exactly what God did. God helped me. He provided for me. He placed people all through my journey. And now I can actually say I found purpose. I found purpose because I'm going places, speaking about my story. I've been able to encourage a lot of women. In 2017, I founded a charity, for widows, widowers, and single parents, where I help them. I've been able to start a show. I'm now a coach. I can help people. I can help orphanages. I can help fatherless children. I can help young people that are pregnant, that they cannot even see the future. I can tell people, I can feel their pain because I've walked the journey. And that's my story. And I don't know whether you're listening to me tonight and it seems as if, oh God, I'm going through a lot and you cannot see anything ahead of you. I'm here to tell you that the God that helped me is there to help you. All you need to do tonight is just raise up your hand wherever you are and ask Him to help you, and He will be ready to help you. Thank you so much. I'll be handing over to Haoni now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shay. That was a very powerful, moving story. And I'm sure many of our viewers might be able to identify with your story. And, you mentioned something about a widow. That is something a couple of years ago, we began to reflect that something we need to set up some form of support for widows in our community. And this is something that is in our thoughts and it's in the planning process. But we'll be hearing more from you, and I'm sure that viewers will be asking questions, and we've got some questions as well to ask you. So thank you very much for sharing your story. At this time, we're going to move on to Sandra Bowden. Sandra will be speaking to us about bereavement and grief and the psychological stages we go through and how to recognize this. Over to you, Sandra. Thank you.
Thank you, Alni. It's a very powerful story that we've just heard from Shay. It's amazing what we can overcome as we live through grief. What I want to do is to give a bit of a context for loss. I shall be going through the stages of grief. But for me, the understanding of loss and change begins from the moment we are born, because the first major loss is from coming out of our mother's womb, from a nice warm cocoon into, well, all our birth stories will be different, but it's often a shock for the baby to come out. And from that point on, there's an African proverb that says, life is the beginning of death. So from the moment we are born, we're walking towards death. But we have to navigate a series of changes, and the changes are not always negative, because change is a part of growth. For example, you wouldn't want to be in primary school at the age of 15. The natural progression of things is that you move from one school to the other. And with each change, there is a bit of a loss that we have to navigate. How we cope with changes in our life will depend on our personalities, will depend on our experiences, and it will depend on the circumstances and our social and our cultural norms. We don't necessarily remember all our losses, but they shape us and become part of our internal world. So for healthy emotional, psychological, and spiritual growth, losses need to be acknowledged in our formative years and throughout our life. And with the appropriate support, which involves telling our stories, receiving appropriate comfort, we will manage the steps of navigating grief and move towards greater self-awareness. However, sometimes we go into the grief process for loss, even if loss is expected. And we find ourselves having to navigate the painful feelings around loss. One of the things that we're all living through at the moment is the changes in our life because of the pandemic. My friends and I were always talking about how life has changed for us, how things are different. And as I was reflecting on this talk, I was thinking, who would have thought that going shopping would involve sanitizing our hands, sanitizing the trolley, when we come in, go into the shop, and when we come out? Who would have thought that it would be the norm to put on a mask and go into a bank and that be okay? Yeah. So we've had to adjust to change and loss in our lifestyle. So I say that to say that we are navigating changes all the time. However, when we lose somebody, as Alni said earlier, when we lose a lost loved one, a pet, or something that is important to us, we step into, or we're thrown into, grief. Several theories of grief exist. There are stages. Some writers have said there are 4 to 12 stages that describe grief. But I think the most well-known grief cycle or theory was, it's been told by, or is sorry, I've lost my words a bit, Dr. Kubler-Ross. She identified 5 overlapping stages that we face as we go through loss. Shock. As we listened to Sayed's story, we heard that the shock when she lost her husband. And that then comes a feeling of numbness. We might go through anger or frustration. We might go through bargaining. We might go through depression. Okay? We might grow, eventually, the aim is to work through to acceptance and integration of our loss. Since the Kubler-Ross, we found that there are other stages of grief or other emotions that are linked to grief, which some of you might identify with. That intense sense of loneliness, that numbness, the hopelessness, the helplessness, maybe the resentment and the envy. We might go through behaviors that can be identified, like loss of appetite, or the opposite, overeating. We might have nightmares. We might have this sense of spiritual emptiness. Life doesn't make any sense anymore. We might want to hang on to those treasures that remind us of our loved ones. Or we might do the opposite. We might avoid anything that reminds us of our loved ones. Children also grieve, and I think sometimes we forget that. I know that, if my own personal story, I lost my older sister at the age of 12. The adults grieved, the adults went to the funeral, but as children, we were not allowed. It was as if we didn't have grief. That was pivotal for us as kids, because the message we got was that adults grieve, not children. And so I buried my grief. I didn't know that I had grief. But several years later, something triggered my grief. And then, as my mum would have said, there was one piece of barley as I let go of the pain of that grief. So I think in our adult attempt or journey in managing grief, we need to remember the kids. Need to remember the children. And behaviours which around children who are grieving include, they might become clingy, they may be daydreaming, might be bedwetting, they might steal, or they might be fearful. They might be compliant, or they might act out. As said earlier, managing grief is very easy, individualistic. So how we manage our grief will depend on who we are. It will also depend on, as I've said earlier, how we are taught to manage grief, how we are supported to manage grief. Our job is to walk through grief and come out the other side. I was playing with the idea of the word grief, and I came up with this idea that grief is grappling with and in navigating recurring intense emotions. so that we can move on with life, so we can reinvest into life. Fairly recently, I was listening to a webinar on grief, and American psychiatrist Yalom, he said, losing someone is like an amputation. You don't recover from it, but you adapt. That's where I'll leave it for the moment, and I'll hand back to Joyce.
Thank you so much for Sandra. And you can relate what the psychiatrist said. You know, I've just taken a note. It's like an amputation. You don't recover from it. You adapt. You know, because the leg doesn't grow back. The leg's gone, not there. And we know from working health that sometimes people who lose a limb can have, it's almost like they can actually feel that limb still being there, even though it's gone. And yeah, I can relate to that. And thank you, Sandra, for such a powerful reflection. Right, we're going to move on to Annie. I think I took over from you there. I think that was. Did you?
That's okay. Sandra mentioned something about amputation, actually, and when I do my bereavement counselling, I normally use that. I normally use that terminology in trying to describe. It's like losing a limb, and at first it takes time to readjust. You know, it's like having one hand, but then sooner or later you get used to not having one hand, even though it might take a long time. So I like that analogy, and I normally use it when I counsel. Over to you, Joyce.
Yeah, thank you, Annie. So we've heard from Shay and a powerful story, and we've heard from Sandra's taken us through the series of grief and loss, bereavement in particular. To hear about children as well that lose loved ones, and we sometimes forget not just the children but the young people, and that's something that really struck with me. Even in the losses that we've experienced as a church, that we tend to go to the children, the immediate children, people, but we forget the grandchildren, and we forget, to remember that they're going through loss as well. So I think that was a really powerful point. Next, we're going to move to hear from Anne. Anne, we shared a biography, a profile earlier on. Forward to hearing Anne's story. So over to Anne at this time.
Hello everyone. So my name's Anne Scott, and I'll share a little bit about my story, and then I'll tell you about the bereavement network, because that stems from it. So in January 2019, my brother, who is a little bit older than me, died suddenly. He had just turned 50, and he had a hereditary illness. Some of you may be familiar with sickle cell disease. He had suffered from a child with that illness, and for those of you who know a little bit about the illness, you'll know that sickle cell you never die from sickle cell. It's the impact and the effects that can bring. But at the time, he was quite well, and he had just celebrated his engagement. My brother had always wanted to get married, and although he had children previously, he'd met the most beautiful person, and they had just got engaged and were planning to get married. And that was in the October, and January, the start of the year, he passed away in 2019. As you can appreciate, that was a huge shock to us and to the family. And we were, as has been said, trying to deal with the loss and coming to terms with him no longer being here. And then just 10 months ago, in May 2020, we lost my mum. And my mum had a long history of coping with vascular dementia. She was cared for by my sisters in the main. And she lost her battle to vascular dementia, as I say. So within 16 months, we'd lost 2 family members. I'm sure many of you can maybe resonate with that, because we know that due to COVID, so many people have lost a loved one, maybe even more than one loved one. Now, my mum didn't have COVID, but because she passed away in May, only 2 months into the pandemic, like has already been said, it was a very difficult time. We couldn't have the usual funeral arrangements. You had to work out who could actually attend the funeral. We had quite a big family. My family name is Sherman, so if that resonates with anyone, you'll know we're quite a big family. And it was difficult. Even I remember the day that my mum passed, and we came out of the hospital and we couldn't hug each other. We couldn't go to each other's homes as we would ordinarily. It was really difficult, because you just had to go basically back home and grieve by yourself. This wasn't my first experience of death, because my dad passed away in 2007, and my sister before him in 1996. And but I don't know if this resonates with anyone, but when you have a loss, it can bring it all back. So even though, the loss was some years ago, a new loss or a more recent loss can bring everything back. And then you, of course, start to think about not only the loss that you've experienced, but also those around you now, the loved ones you have. How long will they be here? How long will I be here? You ask yourself questions. You're asking God to help you, because you start to wonder and think about what lies ahead. And of course, nobody knows. As often found with the death of a loved one, a bit of time passes. You may have had a bit of time off work. You may have returned to work. And it's almost unwritten or unsaid that the expectations is on the mourners that you're kind of getting on with life, and after a certain period expected to sort of have moved on. Although no one obviously says that. People sort of don't know what to say to you. They might not talk about bereavement with you because they feel like it will bring it all back up for you. But many of us want to talk about our loved ones. They were real people. They existed. They're not a figment of our imagination. Whether they had passed recently or passed 20, 30 years ago, they were still here, and we may wish to talk about them. Many people don't know how to, as I say, what to say to us. So therefore they don't say anything, and that can be equally as painful. I heard bereavement defined as love with nowhere to go, and that really resonated with me when I lost my brother and my mum, because you have all this love, and the reason that we grieve is because love and grief are intertwined. If you love somebody and you've lost them, you're going to grieve because you don't have them anymore. So all that love that you have for them, you don't know what to do with now. And that's difficult. And I thought about this and I was praying about it as a practicing Christian and really asking God to sort of help. And I spoke to some other people who'd also experienced going through bereavement. And I thought, if I'm experiencing this loss and this grief and going on this journey, how many other people would like a forum, somewhere where they can openly talk about their loved ones? And it's a safe space. You can actually talk about them with no guilt of feeling, oh dear, the person's going to react differently because I don't know what to say. We're just joining forces because we recognise that, like so many other people, we're on this bereavement journey. And therefore, set about, by God's grace, developing something called the Bereavement Network. The Bereavement Network only has 3 aims. Aim number one is to provide a safe space for individuals to both listen and to share their experiences of living with bereavement. It's about providing opportunities to interact with other people who've been through similar experiences, of course not the same, but similar experiences. And we provide a signposting and networking service. There are lots of bereavement groups around, lots of networks. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel, but we're just trying to be able to say, this is a forum. If you've been affected, you can come and speak to us. So I'm co-creator of the Bereavement Network, and thank you so much. There's some information on the screen there, and you can see our aims there too. The group is facilitated by 3 other people, so there's 4 of us altogether. And our backgrounds, you may recall, mine's in education and training, that's my background. Another member of the team, their background's in psychotherapy, just as we heard from Sandra, that was her background. Healthcare is another person's background, and social work. So we're all professionals in our own right. As facilitators of the Bereavement Network, we're all united by our experiences of bereavement in some way, shape or form, whether it was recent or some time ago. But more importantly than that, we have a willingness to serve. We want to be able to serve others. That's important to us. And so in partnership, as you can see on your screen, with an organisation called Inspired Steps, which is a community initiative which promote well-being through the art of conversation, we want to do just that. We want to provide an open forum where we can have a peer-to-peer network where we can come and support. For this reason, it is open to anyone. The only prerequisite is that you have experienced a bereavement or want to listen to others who have experienced bereavement. So we're providing 6 weeks, continuous 6 weeks of support to start with. It's a new network. Each week, as Sandra has described, actually, which is very coincidental, we're going to be walking through these stages, as you can see here, of bereavement. So each week we'll take a different common stage of bereavement and dig a little deeper and talk about what that means and what it might look like and what some top tips might be to support you if you find yourself going through that particular stage. It's not a course, the Bereavement Network, it's not a course, although it's 6 consecutive weeks to start with. And therefore, you know, there's no prerequisite that you must attend all, or if you miss one, you can't attend. It's not like that. You just join and hopefully you'll be able to gain something from it. As I say, we're not trained counsellors, but we will signpost you to services that exist. It's open to anybody, both men and women. All are welcome, faith or no faith. It's just an open space. You can expect to come along to be welcomed first and foremost. As I say, we're going to spend some time looking at an aspect of bereavement. There'll be time for questions, comments, observations related to the theme. You'll have an opportunity to listen to someone's story, just as you've heard Shay sharing hers. There'll be people with similar experiences. Then there'll be an open space to share your story if that is what you want to do. Equally, there's no pressure. It's just a matter of coming and listening if you don't want to share. But if you do, the opportunity is there for you as well. Then we'll summarise and provide you with some suggested top tips and, of course, signpost you. Our mantra really is to take a minute to reflect and a time to connect. And I think that's what all we're trying to do here. So for further information about the Bereavement Network, if you haven't been signposted to already, you can contact inspiredsteps.co.uk. Our information is on the Community Initiative website, so you can access it there. It is via Zoom, so you can just dial in, and we just look forward to welcoming you and to giving you that open space, regardless of whether you've lost a loved one in the last year or 20 years ago or 30 years ago. We really don't mind. We just want to connect us. So hope that was helpful. Thank you so much. I'll now hand back over to the host.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And just how we connected as well was just absolutely amazing. We were putting this show on, and we knew that this was a focus, and it part of the plan, but we just connected. God allowed us to connect, and isn't that a fantastic work that she's doing in the community? What are your thoughts?
I just think that's fantastic, Joyce, what she's doing, and the thing is, because lately there's been so many losses, so much bereavement. I think that what she's doing is very good. She shared her story about losing her mom and her brother in such a short space of time, and I'm sure that our viewers, Joyce, I'm sure they're going to tap into this bereavement network. I'm sure many are going to find it
Yeah,
very useful.
yeah, and I do hope anyone that's listening out there, if you know someone that is going through loss, bereavement, that they may find this beneficial. They may find it's too early, it's too soon to attend something like this. But there will be those that this is helpful to just connect with someone else who understands, who's going through a similar journey. So we at this time, I almost feel like it'd be good to actually have that song again, or part of the song. If we could just do half of that song, and then we're going to come back to the plenary session, where we're going to bring all our panelists. And again, Anne, I just thank you. And I know it's so soon since you lost your mom and your brother. And I know it's one of our sisters from our Nietzsche church. And, we just thank you for sharing, and we just pay our condolences to all that who have shared tonight. And just to thank you for coming. So we're going to be coming back to our plenary session. For now, we're just going to have that song, Arise, 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 and then we're back to our plenary, where we're going to have some questions and some discussions. If you've got any questions that you want to ask, please put them into the chat. We will bring them up, and we will hear, any topics that you want to ask about bereavement and loss and grief. We want to hear from you tonight. So please, in the YouTube or in Zoom, put your questions forward, and we're happy to answer them for tonight. But now, over to worship again. Arise.
Rising from the land.
Thank you. Thank you. So, that song, anyone can download it on YouTube. Please share it. Available for all. Arise. Thank you. Thank you. So we're moving on into the pre. I hope you out there at home, you've had chance to have a drink, and you're putting your questions in and engaging with us tonight. Thanks so much for staying with us as we now move into our plenary sessions where we're going to be asking our panelists some questions. And then, of course, we're going to go into a bit of a discussion, and that's fine, just on this topic. So, Alni, I think you've got the first question to kick us off.
Yes, thank you, Joyce. And this question is for Shay. Thanks very much again, Shay, for sharing your story. But what I would like to ask, you said at the age of 28, you might have to just repeat what you said again, but for me, this was very catchy. You said that at the age of 28, your world came crashing down, which sounds really devastating. Tell us more about that.
Thank you, Annie. Like I said earlier, at 28, for a girl of 28, you have no clue of what's going on, when you've lost a partner. For me, I've lost, like I said, I lost my sense of identity. I lost who I was because I didn't fit in. Most of my friends at that time, is it that they were married or they were not? So I couldn't fit into that, that cliche or whether you're married or not. And I couldn't also fit into whether I was a widow or not, because every widow I knew back then were elderly people and they had a group. So I didn't fit into, I was lost. And on top of that, I was also a single parent or a single mother. I didn't know what to do. I was the only one doing anything. I didn't know what to expect, during pregnancy, even after pregnancy. So it was a lot going on in my head that I didn't have explanation for. And also, I didn't have anyone to actually ask, maybe a senior widow or something, if there's a name like that, to actually ask, what am I supposed to expect? What's the next thing I'm supposed to do? And that for me was a world of all my dreams, because I had so much of dreams ahead of me. And all those dreams just came going down, crashing down. That for me was a lot, to take in as a young lady.
Right. Thank you very much. You said about losing your identity. So, on top of losing your husband, there were many other things that you experienced loss. But I'm glad that you're able to gain your identity through the difficult process. Thank you very much. I'll now hand over to Joyce.
Thank you, Alni. I've got loads of questions for you, but I've got to curtail my question. Okay. You talked in your book that in your book, and I'll put the book up. I don't know if you can see this book, Unashamed, Finding a Young Widow's Journey from Loss to Triumph. It's available on Amazon at a very reasonable price. And, maybe this could help someone that we know, that out there, get hold of the book on Amazon. And thank you, Shay, for sharing a snippet from your book, but there's loads more nuggets within the book. So you said that every day in the UK there are 500 women who become widowed. And yeah, I thought that was quite staggering. Every day, 500 women. And the question I wanted to ask is, what support do you think would have been helpful to you in the early days of your bereavement as a widow?
Thank you, Joyce. And I'm just going to read a bit of the quote in the book. It is estimated that each day around 500 women in the UK will become widows, and globally an estimated 258.5 million widows with 584.6 million offspring have suffered the same fate, with 3.5 million of these women from Nigeria, and we've not taken statistics for every other place. And also, 1 in every 10 women of marriageable age is widow. And not to talk of a place like Afghanistan and Ukraine, where it's a common thing and it happens almost every time. But one of the things, that I want people to know, or the help that I wish I had, and which is the journey, and that's why I eventually became, took a lot of training and also became an advanced grief recovery, is a lot of people, I think it was Anna said it also, a lot of people do not know what to say to people when they are grieving. A lot of people also assume, you need to pick yourself. Like, we call them what we call mates, where people believe that get on with it. Yes, it's gone. Then so what? Are you the first widow? Just get on with it. Be strong, especially for us sometimes that we're Christian, that God is enough for you. Just go on with it without actually dealing with that essence, with actually reflecting. And when we are talking about grief and loss, is not only bereavement. So for me, like I said, I lost my husband, I lost my person, I lost my house. My house I took a lot of time to actually build. I had to relocate, so I lost that also. I lost a lot of things, my dreams, which are all part of losses. So I think one of the things that we need to do, and that's why we're here to help people, is to let people know that when you are grieving, it's not a broken person. It's just a broken heart. Do you understand? It's just the emotion that needs, because we are not prepared for it. To prepare people that now it has happened, what do you need to do? Things that they can actually write down, to actually take them through that journey, to be able to say, we can help you do this. Tell me about what you are going through. That's one. Also, I think a lot, I wrote it in my book. If we have 1 in 10 women die, become widows, a lot of times we close our eyes as if we don't see these widows. We close our eyes as if we don't see these children, because in my time I went through a lot of things. I had somebody tell me in a party when I was helping to serve food, and she said, "Sorry, you cannot serve my husband." And I said, "Why?" He said, "It's a taboo for a widow to serve my husband." So we need to actually,
Wow.
get people to understand that these people are human, not of a fault of theirs. They've lost someone close to them. Should they suffer for people neglecting them? Should they suffer for people for cultural things that keep going on? So we need people to have more, empowerment programs. We need specialists to be able to help them. Wherever you are, look around, make a conscious effort to actually, whether you're in church, whether you're at work, just look around. And like I said also, I help children with losses. It's so important, how much pain children go through. So those kind of help needs to be intentionally put in place, to be able to help all these women. So that's just a few of what I would say.
No, thank you. That is really helpful. And it's a stark reminder. Look, hearing the statistics, God had a heart for widows, didn't he? Biblically, and as Alni said, there's been some discussions and initiatives that we now need to move on with in support of this particular area. But thank you, Erin. Over to Alni for the next question.
Thanks again, Shay. Just to highlight what you said about the widows. In fact, there was something that was meant to take place last year, because myself and a sister who's a widow felt that there was a need for us to support widows within the community, within our church, and we met and something started. But because of the pandemic, things sort of was put on hold. But we know that this is something that we feel that we need to support widows in our communities. So widows out there, we have not forgotten you. You are on our thoughts. Thank you. I'll just move on now to question for Sandra. Right, Sandra, how do you support someone going through bereavement? As you mentioned, I'm also familiar with the Kubler-Ross stages of grief that you've mentioned. But what is classed as normal grief? So it's like two questions in one. How do you support someone going through bereavement? What is classed as normal grief? And can grief become unhealthy and toxic? And if so, how can we offer support? I know it's a long question, but I'm sure you can answer them.
Thank you, Eileen. Wow, where do you begin? I think with
Yeah.
supporting somebody who goes through grief, I think as Anne has said, it's about knowing that they're still human, that they're going through pain, but they want to tell the story. People may want to tell the story, or they may not want to tell the story, but it's about being empathic where that person is. There is no clear formula or no clear prescription for how you support somebody. It's very individualistic. Some people maybe want to be left alone. Some people may want company. Some people might want a combination of both. But the idea is that you are available and you don't avoid them. You might encourage the person to treat themselves, have go away on a little vacation, as was mentioned earlier. You may encourage them to exercise or to set small goals. But I think that the whole thing is about just understanding where that person is, because it's very individualistic. The purpose is to go through the grief. Having gone through several bereavements myself, there is no roadmap. We come in at different places depending on our experiences. If we've had multiple losses, then it may take us longer to get through our grief. But it's knowing that we actually need to process grief and come out the other side, to reinvest in life, to carry on life without the loved ones. Because it's like the ground that we stood on where the loved ones are there, it's shaken. There's a gap where that loved one might have been, or that pet, or whatever it is, there is a gap. There's an emptiness, there's a numbness. But the aim is to take our time to go through grief. Some people, it's short, some people may take years. I think unhealthy grief or toxic grief happens when somebody gets stuck in any of the stages. If they cannot move past the anger, if they cannot come out of depression, if they cannot come out of anxiety, then that's when grief becomes toxic. And I guess it's for them, that person, to want to change. You can't make somebody change if they don't want to change. In my experience, with people who've come to see me who are in what we would call toxic grief, or who are stuck in grief. I'm not sure that I like the term toxic when talking about a person, because they're going through their grief.
Yeah.
Then it's a case of just taking the time to support. Sometimes people say, well, I'm saying the same thing over and over again. I don't mind. This is how we get through the grief. If people get stuck, they may turn to behaviors like hoarding, where in order to mask the pain of the loss, they're accumulating stuff, and I'm sure we've all seen programs on telly about these people who are stuck in their homes, imprisoned in their homes because of stuff that they can't let go. So I think it's about recognizing that there is help out there if anybody wants to process their grief. And it's also understanding it's too painful. And that's, we have to accept and meet people where they are. Certainly we're not saying be strong, or you should be through this by now. It's understanding that it's painful. and it
Yeah.
takes courage to walk through grief.
Yeah. Thank you.
Back
Thank
to
you
you,
very
Anna.
much. Thank you very much, Sandra. Thank you. Don't know if anybody else want to add to that. If not, I'll hand over to Joyce.
Okay, thank you, Alni. I think all of you have talked about, Sandra and talked about that, pain and grief. And I was speaking to someone today, and she said the pain, right? In my own journey, I felt pain in my abdomen, physical pain. And she just said the pain. And, what would we say to this is directed at Sandra, but please, others feel free to come in after Sandra. What would we say to someone that's just saying, I'm in pain, the pain.
Mm.
That's to you, Sandra, and then if I to comment as well.
I think it would depend on what's going on around them saying the pain, the pain, the pain. But I would want to acknowledge that they're in pain and maybe to see if there's anything that can be physically done to alleviate the pain. But I would not be saying they shouldn't have the pain, because the pain is a symptom of the deep loss that that person has experienced. And sometimes it does feel like that. It feels like a physical aching that, there is no solution to. And I think it's about supporting them to know that that is okay. Yeah. That we don't need to move them through it or tell them they should. That's where they are.
No, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Anybody else wants to comment?
I just want to add to what Sandra said, actually. Number one, that pain to that person is unique. Because for me, when I had mine, I didn't have physical pain, but I had excessive crying, which was unique to me, which nobody knew. It was just me. So I think the first thing for that person is to acknowledge that that pain that they're feeling is real, like Sandra said, and is unique to them. But also, when I have clients like that they can feel the somatic effect of what grief they're feeling, is to let them actually give them an environment to talk. Because what I found out with some people that actually have those physical one is they're holding so much within them, and is that like that container that we have in mental health? When the container is full, it's going to burst out. So it's at that point when it bursts out that they begin to have that pain. So one of the things I say, what are you keeping in you? Have you had any opportunity to actually speak out? I had a woman, that I was working with, and the issue that she never had an opportunity to actually talk about the death of her husband. And the first thing I told her, she was having headaches and things like that. And the first thing I told her was, can you get a piece of paper now and just write everything you wish you told your husband and how you're feeling now? And when she did that exercise, she was like, oh my God, I feel so much better, because apparently she's been keeping so much. So for that person, I would want to advise them, if they have not done so, to actually get somebody where they can actually say what's within them. And if they cannot say it, just say within their free time, get a piece of paper and write it out and actually express as if the person is sitting right in front of them and let it out.
Thank you for that. I've experienced that kind of open chair. Imagine the person's on there and you were speaking to them, and a lot of people going through grief still speak to the one as though they were still there, and that brings them some level of comfort. Just having the dialogue. Before we move on to the next question, I wanted to check with Angela if she wanted to come in before we move on to questions for Anne.
Yes, thank you, Minister Joyce. I would just like to add, having gone through grief, lost my brother. He was 18. He died suddenly in a car accident. Lost my mum. He died in 1990. Lost my mum in 2015 to a rare cancer. We had 3 weeks to prepare, and then she was gone. And then, losing my sister friend Colleen, 25th of March 2020. So I've resonated with a lot of things that have been said tonight, but with each experience, what I've learned is to feel what I'm feeling and not to rush through anything, but to acknowledge what I'm feeling and reflect. And in the stages of grief, you move on when you're ready. There is no roadmap, like someone said. There is no experience is the same. And it doesn't matter whether you had time to prepare or whether it was a sudden death. Each time you hear of someone passing, the memories, I think it was Anne that mentioned the memories come flooding back. But yeah, tonight, for those who are listening and tuning into the show, bereavement, grief, emotions, it's raw, it's real, but you have to feel it and go through. There's no shortcuts through grief. There's no quick way through grief. It's a process, it's a journey. That's my encouragement to anyone that's listening. Yeah.
Thank you, Angela, for that. Thank you. I'm going to move on to question for Anne. Anne, first of all, thank you for sharing your own journey of bereavement and loss. And you're still on that journey, as I think everyone that's here. I just wanted to ask you, what has helped you to face each day? We hear people say we're just taking it one day at a time. What helped you to face each day? And how would you encourage those going through bereavement right now?
Okay, what has helped me? First of all, I want to recognise my family, because I have the most beautiful family, and I hope that the listeners out there will have somebody to connect with, even if it's not a blood relative or whoever, somebody you can connect with. I'm very fortunate to have my husband. I've been married for 20 odd years, and siblings and extended family and church family. I think if you are connected to, although clearly we're not there in the building, some connection there to the community in some way, shape or form, I think that can help. Certainly has helped me, even though we can't meet. We're on Zoom regularly. I've been involved in a number of Bible studies on Zoom. I think what's helped me is to sometimes not focus on me. Actually, it's probably helped me, because there are so many of you out there listening, I'm sure, that are going through things, and perhaps even a more difficult experience than I have shared. And so what has helped me is to know that I'm not alone. I'm not alone because God is with me. I'm not alone because there are other people experiencing similar circumstances. I know that as we go through this life, as Angela just said, you have to go through it. So long as we love, the chances are we will experience loss, sadly. And so I would just encourage people to make connections where they can. As I say, I do lots of Bible studies, lots of connecting with others in community, any way, shape or form. Just being able to reach out to others sometimes helps you to realise, A, how blessed we really are, even though we are going through difficulty, but also to recognise that there are other people who are even worse off than ourselves. And so that's certainly helped. I'm work full time. I'm now doing a master's as well. So I'm always busy with something, which has been good. In terms of a message of hope for anyone who is on their bereavement journey, I would say, whilst death comes to us and end the life, it doesn't have to end our hope. And the way life is sometimes, we can feel like there is no hope because the person we lost is so dear to us. You kind of think, what's the point sometimes? But there is a point. Your life has meaning, my life has meaning, everybody's life, even if they've now gone, their life had meaning. And so I'd really say there's no right or wrong way, as we've discussed. The hope can sometimes be eclipsed by the grief, but the hope is still there. And over time, the hope will grow, it will come back. So hold on is what I'd say. Your life has meaning. Sometimes we have to find a way to navigate what the meaning is. It's difficult sometimes to figure out why things have happened. We may never find the answers to all the questions we have in this life, which is why I am so grateful that there is a God in heaven who looks down on us daily and is with us and has promised us that this is not the end. There has to be more to life than we're born, we grow up, we may get married, we may not, we may have children, we may not, we may have a job, we may not, and then we die. There has got to be more to life than that. And there is, because God has promised us a hope and a heaven where there is going to be no more of this. So I would just encourage us through the scripture of Romans 8 verse 18, which says something about what we suffer now is nothing in comparison to the promise that God has for us. And so as painful, as sad a time as bereavement journey is, however long that journey lasts for you or for myself, rest assured that God has a better plan for us. And one day we're going to see that plan in action, and we'll have eternity to ask him all the questions as to why that happened and why did I have to go through it and all of that. So hang on in there. There is hope.
Thank you so much for that, Anne. And I don't know if there's anybody else that wanted to, on the back of that, add anything before Alni asks another question.
Yeah, thank you, Anne, for what you said. And as I'm listening to you, I think it is about hope, that we have to have hope. But I think sometimes when we're in the pit of grief and it doesn't seem like there's any way out, I think for me it's important to know that we have a choice. And I don't mean this that we can choose to forget our grief, but we can choose, are we going to grow through this or are we going to stagnate? And I think that that's the choice that we have to have in mind as we go through grief. Do I want to grow out of this, or am I going to give up? Which is linked to hope. Yeah. And also, I'd just like to broaden grief out, because we're talking a lot about the loss of loved ones, which is, tragic for all of us. But there are other things that people grieve. I'm sitting here thinking that there may be women out there who can't have children. People that aren't getting married, going into old age, and the dreams are shattered, people who've lost their health. There's lots of ways in which people enter grief. And I think it's also being mindful of that and providing opportunity for people to talk about, the fact that they're not living, or the dream that they had has gone. As well.
Thank you.
I just want to add a few words at the back of that. It's a message of hope, and for everyone watching me, I just want to give you, I call it my Audi, org, to someone there, because sometimes we don't have that org. But one of the things that I tell people, and it's my message of hope to anyone listen, your mess is always your message. You might not understand what you're going through at this moment. If somebody will have told me some few years that I will be talking about this and helping people, I wouldn't have believed it. So you might not understand your journey or what you're going through. And like I say, you might not even see the light in the tunnel at all. But I'm here to tell you that if there is a God that helped me up till this stage, He will help you. You might not see it. And one of the things also that I tell people, the people that we've lost, they've done their best. They're here, they've gone. I'm left here. I need to do all that is within me to be the best of me. And just like Sandra said, it's also a choice. You might not understand it, but there's so much within you. There's so much within that pain that you have gone through. There's so much within you of whatever loss, that have thrown at you. You need to pick up yourself and look at yourself once again. I am born for this. There's a scripture that I like, and I used to tell this people every time. The whole world is waiting for the manifestations of the sons of God and daughters of God. You are one of them. Don't let loss or your mess stop you from manifesting. Be the best that God has put in you despite the loss. Yeah.
I'd like to add as well to that grief, you don't grieve alone. We are connected. So your tears are our tears. That you may be crying the tears that other people can't cry. But to have this sense of connection with other people then also allows you to know that your grief has purpose. Sometimes I say to people when they say, I'm always crying. And I say, well, there are people who can't cry, who haven't got there. So you're crying their tears as well as yours. So it's giving them that sense of purpose. Your tears are your prayer. Your pain is your prayer. Your distress is your prayer. Wherever you are, that is your prayer. You don't have to be anything other than where you are as you travel through your grief.
Wow, thank you so much for those really powerful, powerful reflections. I'm sat here and, Sandra, you talked about loss. And I think, Shay, you talked about it. You not only did you lose your husband, you lost your house, you lost your dreams, you nearly lost a son. We'll come back to that one afterwards. But, and there's the cultural aspect of what you shared as well. So there is just so much. But thank you for those words of hope that you've shared. Over to Alni with, I think you've got a question, haven't you, Alni?
Yes, Joyce. A question actually came through from the one of our listeners, and I think it's not targeted to anyone specific, so anyone can answer. And the question is, some people struggle with guilt after losing a loved one. What advice would you give someone in this position? Someone who's struggling with guilt. This is open to anyone. Or Anne?
A really difficult one, isn't it? What advice would I give someone? I think I would probably say talk about it. Find someone who you can talk about it with. Perhaps someone who's trained to support you in terms of bereavement counselling. I would certainly say that, as was said earlier, we all have decisions in life, and sometimes we don't make the best ones sometimes. And so whatever we're going through, rightly or wrongly, whether the guilt is, meant to be there or not, whether it's valid or not, it's valid for you because that's your perception. So I would certainly say at the end of the day, it's about how you can move forward. Sometimes we can stay in the past and we can stay with those feelings, but what's going to help you move forward? And I think certainly I'd be praying about it if I was a believer, or talking to somebody about, and or talking to somebody about it, who I can gain some support from. So it's a process. Guilt is a process. Feelings are a process, but feelings can sometimes weigh us down. I can feel like not going to work today because I just feel sad, but actually at some point I have to realize that I have to go to work. So sometimes feelings can overwhelm us and can control us. Let's have a think about how we can take back that control. What can we do that's within our locus of control to help us to move forward? Because we can't change the past. We can only try and move forward. That's my little 2 pence.
Right, thank you very much,
I might ask the question, what purpose does it serve? Might be a question I may ask, in order to support them to explore guilt. Or I might say, what rule have you broken that is causing you to feel guilty? And sometimes in my journey working with people, we have a rule book in our head which says that we ought to be, we ought to do, we ought to have. And when that rule is broken, then we feel guilty. And we need to examine, is there any truth in that rule that we had in the first place? So I might use that, and validate they feel guilty.
Thanks, Sandra. I think, oh, sorry, Shay.
No, I was just going to add to that. Thank you, Alni. Sometimes people feel guilty, and to tell the person it's okay for you to feel guilty sometimes. Because when I lost my dad, I felt guilty. In fact, when I lost my husband, I felt guilty. Number one, I felt guilty why I listened and I didn't take the risk and travel, even though it was late. Do you get? I also
Yeah.
felt guilty when I lost my dad because he had to travel to the US, to be treated. And I felt guilty that why didn't I take time off work and follow him there? But it's understanding, first of all, why are you feeling guilty? I'm able to actually understand why I felt those guilt because I retraced, I wrote, we call it an history graph, to understand where the root cause of the feeling. I have a man that I'm working with, and why he felt guilty and is not able to move on until when we started working together was because his wife died of cancer and died in his hand. So whenever he wants to talk to any other lady, he feels the guilt that I'm betraying this woman. So we needed to start with that feeling of betrayal to actually let him or help him unflesh the fact that is it actually betrayal? Define betrayal. What does that mean to you? So sometimes to let that person know that it's okay for you to feel guilty, but you need to trace why you are feeling guilty. I traced it and I can say it because I've been able to. So you need to look at that source of the guilt. And like Sandra said, sometimes, understanding that once you understand the root cause, you set yourself free because it's just like the man behind the jail. Until you have the key, you can't go out. So you need to understand what is the key to that guilt and actually get the reason why you're feeling that guilt so that you can move on.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Over to you, Joyce.
Thank you, Alni. You wouldn't believe it, but I've just checked the watch and the clock, and we're kind of done. It's like 8:30, 9, 9:30 already. So 2 hours goes by so quickly, and talking about hope. I know, Shay, that in your story that you got married again, and God enabled you to get married again, and you're kind of moving on, if there's such a word as moving on, but somewhere along the line, that acceptance that it's okay to make that next step and to move forward, and that might be different for different people, as we've heard today. But I just want to take the opportunity to thank all of our panelists today for sharing some really personal stories and journeys. Thank you for trusting us to come on a platform and to share some of your own vulnerabilities. I really, we really appreciate. Some of you were short notice as well. It, as I said right at the beginning of the program, is that it is a sensitive area. It's not an easy topic to discuss, but we could not discuss it. It was important to acknowledge and to discuss it. And you know, Anne, thank you for sharing. You know, the purpose behind your pain, and look what it's led to. You know, the bereavement network, and we will show that again towards the end of the program. So we will make sure that gets put on our website as well, so that if anybody wants to participate in that, that they feel free to. And I know, Shay, you're putting on a workshop as well, a virtual workshop, and we'll make sure that gets circulated as well. Sandra, thank you for taking the time to be with us tonight, and for sharing, you know, so powerfully, you know, from your years and years of experience. And Angela, thank you. Thank you for doing that reflection, because I think it means a lot to a lot of people. And I know those who have not had the opportunity to watch it tonight, many will go back and watch it. And I'm sure they will be blessed, and they'll find something from tonight that they feel will help them. Or it might be someone who, you know, hearing something will know how to help someone who is bereaved. So thank you all. Alni, any last words to say to our guests before they go?
Well, just thank you all for sharing your story and for sharing your experience and agreeing to come on tonight. Whatever you've said tonight, I'm sure that many will benefit, because bereavement is not something that some people like to talk about. And I'm glad for this platform, because it's something, as I said in my introduction, is something I'm passionate about bereavement. And I think that we have started something, and I thank you for your time. And I'm sure that we'll connect even more on this level. So thank you.
Thank you. And please remember, buy a book. It's all right. I've got no cuts in this book at all, but just to thank Shay for coming and sharing her story. Please, it's on Amazon. I'm going the wrong way with the book. Unashamed, a young widow's journey from loss to triumph, and you'll read a full story. There's so much more in her story. Buy a book and support her with the work that she's doing. So we've come to the end of our say bye-bye to our panelists. Good night, panelists. And we're just going to say, Ali and I are just going to say goodbye to the rest of the audience now. Yeah, just as we close out for tonight. Wow, I just feel, you know, you can't go through a session like that and not feel moved. You know, and I feel really moved just listening to the stories. But I think as you listen to these stories, you also you get in touch with your own loss, your own grief. And as Sandra said, it's not just grief in terms of the loss of a loved one. It might be other things that you might be going through, we might be going through, that leaves you with that feeling of loss and bereavement. And, you know, that just listening tonight is just kind of connected. I've just connected in there, and you can't help but reflect. But, you know, there was so much powerful words of hope, you know, so much powerful words that will enable every listener to just take hope from the words that have been shared tonight. Any last reflections from you, Alni?
Yeah, because people are at different stages in their bereavement. some might be thinking, what hope? What hope do I have? But at the same time, there is hope. There is hope. And I'm sure that this session this evening has empowered many, and I'm sure they're going to seek help for those who were reluctant to talk about bereavement, to talk about their grief, this guilt. Many feel, guilt. Why should I keep on telling my story? I'm supporting someone at the moment, and one of the things I've learned, Joyce, is to be patient, because sometimes the person kept on repeating their story, and it's good when they can talk about their story. And I think tonight it's been eye opener for many that bereavement and loss is something that affects all of us, regardless of being a Christian or a non-Christian. It comes to us all, but the support is there, and we're here to provide support for those who want the support. So don't suffer in silence, and that's what I would say. Don't suffer in silence.
Thank you so much. And just to say that, our churches have to be a beacon of support within our communities, because the community, there is so much pain and grief in our communities, as Sister Angela shared about the impact of the pandemic and so
Yeah.
forth. And our community is looking, they're looking for hope. They're looking
Yes.
for a place, a safe haven. And I think after tonight, we will be sharing across our churches. There are resources available that supports leaders to help those who are going through bereavement. There's a big campaign now called Hope, Loss and Hope, that's being led by the Church of England, but it's a piece of work that all churches can get involved in, all faith groups can get involved in, and even if you are of no faith, you can get involved in supporting people that have those questions. We didn't get a chance to have half the questions, but when a loved one dies, it's like, well, people ask so many questions and question their existence, and so there's so much more we can do on this topic, and we will really be sharing some further information moving forward. So without any further ado, just want to thank our listeners. Thank you all for joining us. We do want to say one last thing though before we go, just to let you know a diary date. Please put the 29th of May in your diary. 29th of May, we will be having our annual ladies conference, online ladies conference. Those of you who are retreaters know that end of May, that weekend, we will be going away on our retreat. Well, we know we can't go away because of the pandemic, but trust me, we're going to go away online and we're going to have a fantastic time. So please put the 29th of May in your diary, and over the next couple of weeks, you will see some further information about the conference. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. I can't wait to share the details with you, but if I share tonight, it's going to be premature, but just hold the date, and we'll share more to follow. Next month, we want to cover the topic dementia, memory loss and dementia. Now, it's impacted so many people during the lockdown. And also, I don't know, my memory is kind of, I have to wonder sometimes what's happening to my memory as well. But we're going to be looking at that topic. Carers, please join us next month. the end of April for our next Connect Live series. So over and out at this time. Good night to you all. Good night from myself and good night from Albie.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you very much for
Good
watching.
night.
Good night.
Good night.
are all things, and to you are all things. You deserve the glory. Worthy is your name, worthy is your name, Jesus. You deserve the praise. Worthy is your name, worthy is your name, Jesus.